So no one outside.
Can't hear you.
係咪應該有位同事做 attendance？ 冇安排到啊？哦，不如傳俾佢哋。哦 ，OK， 喺我呢個。哦，佢冇安排到 ，OK， 冇問題，自己嘥翻 ，OK， 都唔使佢哋自己有啦，係啦。咁麻煩同學自己簽翻，你由呢度一路塞出嚟俾所有人。係咪有 attendance 嘅 requirement？ 有，好，幾多？70 75%，唔知啊，我仲I don't care. Well, I mean, it's not really important for part-time students. I don't pay attendance because all of you are working people. Right? Sometimes you are so busy. And you will miss 1 or 2 lectures, right? So I can understand. I mean, for the full-time student, for the kids, I will strictly enforce their attendance. But for the part-time student, I don't really think it's matter at all. But anyway, right? You sign up the attendance form. So make sure you can take the exam. Make sure you can take the exam. All right? Okay, maybe we start the class, right? So lecture 2. So before we start lecture 2, so let's try to recall what we learned in lecture 1, right? So briefly, right? Of course, briefly. What we learned in lecture 1. Well, I want to ask you a question first. What is the difference between studying business law and business associations? Difference. Are they the same? Business law and business associations. Our module is business association, right? So any difference with business law or commercial law? Are they the same thing? They are not the same, right? They are not the same. Of course, they are not the same, right? But what is the difference? So in this module, what we're supposed to learn from this module? So, right, business vehicle. So practice. So business law concerning practice. So I would say business law related to the process, right? Process when you are running a business or when you're doing business transaction. So you have to learn about, say, like contract law, right? When you run a business, you have to sign a contract. So you have to understand contract law. Sometimes you have to borrow money from the bank. So you have to understand, say, like banking law, right? Sometimes you have to make a payment, and you have to understand the law related to, partial payments, right? Or to pay by installments. All this stuff. So that's what we need to learn from business law. But for business association, it means that we need to understand the different business vehicle, right? Because when you want to run a business, you have to establish something, an entity, in order to achieve your purpose, right? So that's business associations. So last time we learned about the 3 basic forms in running a business. So what are they? Sole proprietor, number 1, right? Another one, partnership. And then the last one, company, right? Remember? So I mean, in this module, we are going to focus on the 3 vehicles. And of course, 80% of the time we spend on company. Because starting from lecture 3, everything will be related to company, right? So we only have lecture 2 to talk about partnerships and sole proprietor, right? But I can tell you that, right? I can tell you. So even we just have one lecture on sole proprietorships and partnership, but I can almost guarantee that you will have questions in the exam on partnership and sole proprietor, right? So that's still very important, right? Very important. But by comparing with a company, they tend to be, simple, right? So we only need one lecture to learn about sole proprietor and partnership, right? But it doesn't mean that they are not important. They're still very important. I'm sure. I guarantee. Right? I guarantee you are going to have questions on partnership, right? Okay. So let's start the class. No, one more thing, right? One more thing. We learned the legal principle in lecture 1. But last time I told you that that's only a warm-up. That legal principle will not come up in exam directly. But you're supposed to understand. What is it? What is that legal principle? Agency, right? What's agency? Anyone? Briefly. What's it? Three parties, right, very good, right? Three parties involved always. Two contracts, right, very good, right, very good. 有聽書喎, right? Yeah, 3 parties and 2 contracts. So what are the 3 parties here? The principal and agent, right, and then the third party, right. So how about the 2 contracts? The first contract between the principal and agent, right. How about another contract? Principal and the third party, right, correct, right, very good. So what mean by agent or what mean by agency? When someone authorizes another person to do something on behalf of you, right? Then you created an agent or agency, right? Okay, so that's what we learned in lecture 1. So let's start lecture 2, right? Lecture 2. So in lecture 2, we are going to focus on sole proprietor and partnership. But before that, right? Before that, let's try to refresh your memories. There are 3 different vehicles if you want to run a business in Hong Kong, right? So starting with the simplest one, and that is the sole proprietor, right? Sole proprietor. So normally, when you want to run a business which is very small and personal, right? Can you give me an example? Say, what I mean by personal? The business will be very personal. Barrister, yes, one of it, right? Well, why are you saying that a barrister is offering a personal service? Yes, you're correct, right? Your answer is correct, but why? By comparing with a law firm, right? So sometimes you already learned in the Hong Kong legal system, and you know that you cannot engage you cannot engage a barrister directly, right? Do you know the rules? You have to engage a law firm, and then the law firm is solicitors. They retain a barrister. So you cannot retain a barrister directly, right? So that's the professional conduct. And then by comparing with solicitor firms, right, law firm, and the barristers, when you approach a law firm, it means a group of people, right? An organization is serving you. When you approach the barristers, right, you approach one single person. So that person may be Edward Tong, right? Or Ronnie Tong, right? Or Martin Lee, right? That particular person. So we are calling it personal service. And that's the characteristic of sole proprietor, right? It's a one person, right? One person. And give you another example, like a medical doctor, an MD, right? An MD. Or anyone doing a massage to you. Acupuncture, right? Right? Acupuncturists. So they are personal service. But you are looking for the service from that person directly. But for partnerships, you're referring to a group of persons. For a company, a big organization, right? So normally, if your business concerns personal service, a small one, then you should consider sole proprietorships. For a group of people, medium size, normally, that will be partnership, right? And of course, if you are thinking a big investment, involve a lot of money, right? A lot of money, a lot of people, a lot of staff, a very risky business, then think about a company. A company will be good, right? Company will be good. But I want to ask you a question, right? You're in the law firm, and your client insists on using the form of sole proprietorships. With a business, it involves thousands of employees, $1 billion of money, right? And also very risky. But your client insists on using sole proprietorships. Is it possible? Do you understand my question here, right? So Mary, right? So you suppose you are a lawyer, right? Or at least you run the law firm. So you have a client here, Mary, right? So you are married, right? You are married, right? Suppose that you are the client, right? Okay. All right, okay. So you went to the law firm, you're seeking for legal advice, and you told the lawyer that I'm having a lot of money to invest here, right? $1 billion, right? Not million, $1 billion. So my business project will be, involving overseas construction project, all right? I'm going to recruit 1,000 staff to work for me. But I only want to run my business as a sole proprietor. Is it possible? Is it possible? Yes or no? Well, you already learned it, right? You already learned it in lecture 1. And this very short summary here. You understand that normally you should only consider sole proprietorships when your business tend to be a very small one, right? Personal, like a doctor, right? Like a barristers, like a fortune teller, like a fortune teller. So normally that will not be suitable. You want to run a very big business. But I want to ask a question, is it possible? Is it possible? The answer is yes, right? Yes, why not, right? Possible, but not sensible. Not advisable, and not sensible, but possible. So you have to remember that, right? You have to remember. So what we learned in these short paragraphs, it makes business sense. It means that when you're running a big business, try to incorporate a company. So that will be good, right? But even you want to do something very personal, you only want to run a very small business, you can still incorporate a company to do it. And even if you want to run a really big business, a lot of people being involved, a lot of money being involved, but if you want to insist on, right, using sole proprietorship, the answer is yes, why not, right? That's possible, but remember, not sensible, right? Not sensible. Not suitable, right? Not suitable. Okay, so remember that that's only a general guideline, but it's not a must, right? I'm not saying that you have to, right? I'm not saying that you have to, but that would be advisable to do so. So remember that when you practice, but especially in commercial law, right? Especially in commercial law. So apart from the legal principle, you also need to be very sensible, right? You have to be very sensible before you give your advice to your client. But most of the time, they're businessmen. Right? They want something, makes sense in business, right? All right. Why we need to learn about different business vehicles? Apart from the business consideration, we also need to consider the legal implication, right? You know that, right? You know that. We already discussed it a lot. A small business, sole proprietor, right? A medium-sized one, a partnership, right? A very big one, company, right? You already learned that. But apart from the business considerations, so why we need to understand different vehicles? Because when you are having the different business vehicles here, the legal implication will also be very important. What I mean by legal implications? See, like the liability, right? Involved, the right involved, the risk involved, the structures, right? The structures. For example, just use of common sense. Sole proprietorship will be very simple, right? The simplest form, a partnership will be a little bit more complicated. Then company will be quite complicated. Because when you're using different vehicles, everything will be different. And you have to think about it, right? You have to think about it. Think about the risk involved, right? liability structures, everything, right? Everything. Okay, so let's start from the simplest one, right? 最簡單嗰個 sole proprietor 獨資經營 right? 獨資經營 sole proprietor. So the first one, the first kind of business vehicle, the sole proprietorships, was the basic form and the simplest form. 現在 So everyone 現在 silent on it. Okay. So sole proprietorship, the simplest one. So what it means? What it means for sole proprietorships is merely an individual carrying out the business by himself. So what it means by a sole proprietor or sole proprietorships is not right? It's not a separate legal entity. When you form a partnership, right? You think about it again. Use the example of barrister again. Think about my practice. In the legal profession, right? In my industries, so people learn about my name. In the law firm, they want to instruct a corporate lawyer, so they think about the name of a particular barrister. And this maybe Edward Tong, right? Edward Tong may be good in company law. Martin Wong may be good in criminal law, right? Cindy Wong may be good in property law. So they think about a name, right? So what I mean by sole proprietorships? Actually, a person, right? A human being, yourself, right? The person, that human being. And then you think about by comparing with the partnerships, by comparing with a company. So sometimes you don't have to engage a barrister. For example, in conveyancing, when you only need to buy properties, right? When you buy a piece of land, when you want to drop the tenancy agreements, or when you want to drop something, right? So you don't have to engage a barrister. So, but normally, only when you suing someone in court, right? I mean litigations, or you are seeking advice on some really complicated problem, then you have to retain a barrister. So otherwise, right, normally, for the lay kind, when they look for legal service, they engage a law firm. And then think about a law firm, right? When you think about a law firm, you think about the name of the law firm. Richard Butler, right? B.S. Brown, Wan Lei Law, right? Fort Guan, a lot of many different, some of you were in law firm, you understand those names here. Then you think about the name of a partnership, right? The name of a business. When you want to buy a smartphone, right? You buy from Apple, you buy from LG, you buy from Samsung. Then you think about the name of the company. Back to the sole proprietor again. Whenever you approach a sole proprietor, whenever you think about sole proprietorships, you think about not the name of a company, not the name of an organization, but the name of a person, right? So that doctor is good. Dr. Wong is good in treating your skin, right? Martin Wong is good to handle criminal cases, right? And Mr. Chen is good in doing the acupuncture, right? So sole proprietor is all about a person, right? Yourself, a human being. So that will be a business being owned and managed by individuals. It's personally responsible for everything. So when you conduct your business as a sole proprietor, you are the one, if you have a small shop, say like Sam's Smartphone in Mong Kok, right? In Mong Kok. You want a shopping mall in Mong Kok. So you are the one to sign the tenancy agreement with your own name. Maybe you need some salesmen, right? Some assistants. Then you recruit all the salesmen by signing an employment contract with your own name. And then you buy all the stocks here, right? All the equipment, raw materials. So everything under your own name. So you own everything, right? You own everything. And you are the business. Because you are not creating anything new here. say like by comparing with partnerships like company. All right? So that's sole proprietor. So under what kind of situation that an investor may consider to use sole proprietorships as a device in conducting his own business? Number one, right, you already learned it. And I think that's common sense. If you're thinking about setting up small business, simple business structures, right, I always emphasize on small business. Because if you're running a very big business, a lot of people involved, many departments involved, so that will not be suitable to run as sole proprietorships. Because it's not possible for one person to take care of too many things, right? It's not really sensible at all. But possible, right? If you really want it, if you really want it, it's possible, but not sensible. So you have to, right? You have to think about it. If you really want to start your business as a sole proprietorship, so make sure that you only want to run a small business. So something that can be handled by yourself, right? If you are inexperienced in doing business, why? Because you don't have to cooperate with the others. And you don't have to face a very complicated structure. If you set up a company, you're going to learn about it later, right? If you set up a company, you're going to have the board of directors. You're going to have shareholders. Then you have to issue shares. You have to think about the authority of the directors. You have to think about, the division of authority between the shareholders and the directors. Then you have to think about the capital structures, and then you have to think about how to drop your articles. So a lot of things involved. And even for just a partnership, you're still working with the others. By comparing with sole proprietor, right, or sole proprietorships, in a sole proprietorships, you're the only person in take care of everything, right? Only one. Right? You're the only one. You're selling pancake. You are practicing law, right? You are doing the acupuncture. So you are not cooperating with anyone but yourself only, right? So that may be good, right? Maybe. I'm not saying it must, right? That may be good for someone without a very substantial experience in the commercial world. And this one is very important. In the nature of the business, mostly personal. So it means that, right? It means that when the customers think about that kind of service, they always can associate with a name. So when you want to buy a smartphone, right? So what's in your mind? So I don't think that will associate with a particular name. If you want to buy a smartphone from Samsung, then you think about Samsung as a company, right? When you want to buy iPhone, you think about Apple. I don't think, who's the CEO in Samsung? You don't know, right? Anyone have a Samsung smartphone? I'm sure some of you get a Galaxy Note, right? Galaxy Note or Galaxy S. I'm sure, right? Some of you, the Samsung smartphone here. But anyone know the CEO of Samsung? Or the regional director of Hong Kong, in Hong Kong or Asia? You don't know, right? Do you really care about it? Not really, right? Not really. Because when you think about a smartphone, you think about a company, right? And then think about a doctor. So unfortunately, you get cancer, right? Or you get a heart disease, something so serious. Then normally, right? So you ask the friends around you, right? Can you recommend any good doctor to me? So someone saying that, oh, Dr. Wong, from Central is really good, right? In IFC, right? For example, Dr. Wong in IFC is very good. Then I'm sure that you only want Dr. Wong in IFC, but not another doctor, just because it's also practicing in IFC. Right? Because you want that particular person, because that's what you heard from your friend, right? That's what being recommended by your friends. Well, he's a really good doctor, right? He can cure cancer, not 100%, 60%, right? So if your business is always associated with a name, then that will be suitable to be operated as a sole proprietorship. You get my point, right? And that's very important. You want to avoid complicated formalities. But when you want to form a partnerships, you have to draft some documents. You have to do, you have to prepare some documentations. When you want to form a company, you have to fill some forms. You have to file the forms to government department. Government department, we call it company registry, right? 公司註冊處. And then you have to deal with some. Okay. So when you form partnerships, when you form a company, so there are a lot of documents you have to deal with, formalities. And then think about a sole partnerships. What you need to do, any particular document, you have to sign, you have to draft. The answer is no, nothing. Nothing. If you want to run your business as a sole proprietor, a sole proprietorship, you can do it immediately, right now. Right? So I'll explain to you later in the coming pages. So let's bear in mind first. You have no intention to invite other investors to join your business or without frequent demand for extra capital. It means you are not always thinking about changing the structure of your operations. You are not always thinking about having more investors, having more funds, and more investments, right? Then that would be suitable to run your business as a sole proprietor. If you always want to have more investment, more investors, then think about a company. Well, I haven't yet explained to you, but just use your common sense. You know that when you have a company, you can issue shares, right? 股份. So that's a vehicle only available for a company. When you issue shares, you just print out some papers, then you can return with real cash. But that's not possible as a sole proprietor, right? What you can say, no, right? Nothing. When you run your business as a sole proprietor, then you can only handle everything by yourself, and that's all. All right? And that's all. If the business is not risky, so when you run your business as a sole proprietor, you fully expose yourself to the very cruel commercial world, all right? Because you don't have a shield here. Then I practice as a barrister, so I'm using my own name. So anything wrong with my practice, so think about my reputation, right? So everyone remember that. Not everyone. Someone else, right? Edward Wong, right? Edward Wong. Right? So think about if Edward Wong are barristers, right? He performed terribly in court, and then we learned that in the industries, very fast question. There's only a small circle. I can tell you, there's around 1,000 barristers in Hong Kong. Only half of them in active practice. Say like around 500, 600, and they half of them, focus on criminal, another half focus on civil. So around 300 barristers focus on civil matters. And think about how many of them just work on corporate matters. Maybe, I don't know, 40 or 50. I'm one of them, right? So you are performed terribly in court. And then we learned that, within the legal professions, within a few days, just a few hours, right? They share everything in Twitter, in Facebook, in Instagram. So that will be terrible, right? Because think about your reputation. You practice your business with your own name. But if something wrong with the company, well, that's not good for the company, but that's still a company. So we make a mistake collectively, right? So no one need to get shot, but just, the whole organization made a mistake. So that's still damaging, right? Not really good. But by comparing with one single person, so that would be disastrous, right? It almost ends your whole career, right? If you don't trust me, you can try one day if you really practice as a lawyer, right? And you will know that. So how damaging it can be if you make a mistake in court, right? But we don't have a choice, right? I don't want to practice as a sole proprietor. I want to incorporate a company with limited liability, but that is professional conduct, right? It's not something I can do, right? I'm not possible to practice as a company, right? But that's professional conduct, right? I don't have a choice. I don't want to, right? I don't want to. But if you have a choice, don't do that, right? Don't do that. So you have to make sure normally, right? Normally, you have to make sure that your business is not really risky. If you're going to face a very high degree of risk, then think about a company. A company will be much better. You're going to learn about it later, right? So how about the procedure in setting up a sole proprietorship? Actually, I just told you a few minutes before. What you need to do to set up a sole proprietorship, to run your business as a sole proprietor, what you need to do, any formalities. Well, just use your common sense, right? Use your common sense. You know that when you want to form a company, you cannot do it immediately. So nowadays you can do it within a few days, right? Because you can do it online. So that will be, I don't know, or maybe just a few hours, right? If you already have all the documents. I mean, very fast, right? A few days or a few hours. But just using your common sense, you know that, right? You know that. You cannot incorporate a company immediately, right? Just at this moment, not possible. Then think about sole proprietorship. Use a very simple case, right? Very simple case. Buy and sell, right? Buy and sell. Using my watch again, right? Because I like mechanical watches. You can count on how many I'm wearing. Right? This is the same one, right? If you really like this one, right? You want to buy one. So you want to buy a lot, right? You want to buy a lot. Then you ask me a question, how many you have, right? This watch, I really like it, right? Maybe I can buy and then sell it in Japan or sell it in Europe, right? I'm going to make a profit from it. So you ask me questions. How many I get? I have 100, right? I have 100. So I can, sell to you all of them for $100,000, right? $100,000. So I will deliver all the watches to your office tomorrow. So what I'm doing here? Well, I'm not practicing law, right? I'm not practicing law, so what I'm doing here? I'm working as a trader. I'm selling something, right? So I'm actually engaging in a business at this moment. So think about my status. I'm the only person in selling the watches to this lady, right? So no other person working with me. I'm alone, and I don't have a company. So it is Eberton and this lady doing the business that I'm actually what? Running the business of buy and sell as a sole proprietor. All right? Do I have any license here? Do I have any approval here? I don't have any license. Right? I don't have any license. I don't have any approval. But I just promise, right? I made a contract with this lady to deliver some watches to you, and you're going to pay me $100,000. You know that we can make a contract verbally, right? A verbal contract is also valid. You haven't yet learned about contract law. Not yet, right? Not yet. But you learn about the first principle in contract law first, right? First principle is that you can make a contract orally. You don't have to make it black and white. You don't have to make it as a piece of paper. Right? Provided that you have offer acceptance. I offer something and then you agree with it, then we have a contract. So we have a contract here, and it involves buy and sell, trading of mechanical watches, right? Do you think that this business transactions is legal? Is it legal? Do you think that I need approval from any government department? Or do you think that I need to have any license from anyone, any person, or any government departments? Yes or no? So I need to have approval from someone else. Who? Just mechanical watches. Right? Do you think that I need to have approval from someone else in Hong Kong or abroad? Do you think that I need to have a license? I only get a license to practice law, right? But I don't have a license to trade in mechanical watches. So is this transaction still legal or valid? The answer is what? Yes, absolutely legal, absolutely valid. So you have to understand that, at least in Hong Kong, right? That may not be the case for other jurisdictions or in other countries, but at least in Hong Kong, except for some restricted profession or industry. For example, you cannot call yourself a CPA, right? Because you need to have a license, but that's restricted. You cannot call yourself as a lawyer. You cannot call yourself a solicitor, barrister, right? You cannot use medical doctor, visa, right? Dentist. So that kind of industry being restricted. If you are selling drugs or medication, then you need to have a license, right? So if you don't have a license, even you sign a contract in selling drugs or medicine, that will be invalid, and you may even committed a criminal offense, right? But except for those restricted industry or professions, normally in Hong Kong, when you run a business, you don't need to have approval from anyone, right? You don't have to. But it doesn't mean that you need to do nothing. One thing you have to do, you have to apply for a business registration certificate from the IRD. So something we call the BR cert, right? 商業登記證. All right. So any contradiction here? Because on one hand, right? On the one hand, I told you that you don't need to have approval. You don't need to have any license to run a business in Hong Kong normally, right? Unless for some restricted industry or restricted profession. But on the other hand, I told you that you have to get the business registration certificate. Are they contradict? So I'm telling you something which contradict with each other. Yes or no? No, they are not. Contradict. Why? Where you get the business registration certificate? Where you get it? Government, of course, right? Which department? IRD, right? IRD domain. No, IRD, they are not doing registrations. So think about the primary purpose of IRD. What's IRD first? Inland Revenue Department, right? So what's their primary concern? Think about this department. Tax, right? Tax. I think they only care about tax. Nothing but tax. So when you get the BR cert from IRD, what it means? Why the BR cert is not from the police department, not from the custom excise? Why this is not from ICAC? Why the business registration certificate is not from the company registry? It's not from the land registry, but only from IRD. Why? So the BR cert, right? We just call it the BR cert. It's not approval from the government in running your business, but that is a registration for your tax liability. Because when you want to run a business in Hong Kong, you have to declare, right? You have to declare to the IRD because you are going to have tax liability, right? So that's the document you need to have. You need to have the BR cert. You need to register with the IRD with the BR cert. But remember that, don't make it wrong. So you are having it because you have the tax liability, but not because you need to have the approval from the government. So, right? So, using the same example again, if I'm selling some watches to this lady, right? I deliver 100 mechanical watches to this lady and also get a payment. So I'm doing business transactions. Even I don't get the BRSA, right? I don't have the BRSA. This transaction itself is still valid. I'm not doing anything illegal. No one can arrest me. But I will have problem. I will have trouble with IRD because I violated the tax law, right? So remember that, right? So you have to understand whether you need to have a license or certificate or anything before you run the business. The answer is yes or no, right? Yes, it means, of course, the BRSA. No, it means, well, actually, the BRSA is not something to approve your business, right? But you don't have to. So under our system, under the common law system in Hong Kong, when you want to run a business, except for some restricted industry, remember, right? There's some restricted industry, like you cannot sell drugs, medicine, right? Weapons, oils, all these gasoline, petroleum, right? So all these things being regulated, you need to have a license. Except for, let's say, like selling mechanical watches, selling smartphones, selling computer, you don't need to have the approval from the government, right? Never. You only need to declare your tax liability, right? So you need to have a very clear concept in mind. So what's the procedure in setting up sole proprietorships? Well, actually, that's one thing only. Right? That's the BRSA. You only need to get the BRSA. And remember, right? Remember, so no one's going to approve your business. So you can always get the BRSA. You just file the forms with all the information here. Right? They don't care. Right? They don't care. Unless for some restricted industry, remember, right? Unless for some restricted industries, like medicine, drugs, right? So otherwise, you don't have to. So the BRSA is not approval from the government, but only to declare your tax liability. So always bear in mind. So BRSA being needed, not just for the sole proprietor, but also for the partnership or a company, right? Or corporate bodies. So BRSA is always needed when you want to run a business in Hong Kong, but that's only for tax, right? Only for tax. Something like this, right? Something like this. But that will not be examined. That will not be examined. Just want to take a look at it. So how about the advantages of sole proprietorship? Advantages. Of course, there are some advantages. Otherwise, we don't have to form our business as a sole proprietorship. There must be some reason. First, right? Simplicity. Right? Simplicity. I like it, right? I really like it. I once heard from, I'm a great fan of Apple products, right? I remember that Steve Jobs, right, before he passed away, he said something like this: simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Right? Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So in the old days of the iPhone, you don't get one button, right? It's only one button here. But other smartphone, other digital devices, they need to have a keyboard, right? A lot of stuff. What I mean by simplicity is ultimate sophistication. You can only become simple when you fully understand what you want to do, right? When you don't have a key in mind, you don't know what you want to do, then the structure tends to be very complicated. If you truly understand what you want to do, then you can make things simple. So that principle also applies to assignment, in your assignment and in examination. Right? So normally when you fully understand the questions, when you truly understand the legal principle involved, then you can make your answer very simple and very straightforward. Right? When your answer tend to be very long and complicated, because you get confused with the main issues. Okay, I don't go too far, right? But remember, what's the first advantage in forming sole proprietorships? Simple, right? Or simplicity. Why? Because so as a sole proprietor, you're actually running a business by yourself. right? Because you are the business. You don't have to create anything. I use the example of the smartphones again, right? So when Steve Jobs, again, Steve Jobs, when he first introduced the iPhone, right? At that time, there are other electronic devices, but they need to use the stylus, right? The pen, right? You know the stylus, the pen. But Steve Jobs tell everyone that you don't need to have a stylus because you have the best stylus, and that's your finger, right? That's your fingers, your hand, your fingers. It's the best stylus. So you don't need to have anything, other than your own hands. And then think about sole proprietorships, right? When you want to run a business, if you want to make it simple, you don't have to create anything new because you as a person can run a business. A human being, right? Your own name can run a business. Why? Because you can sign a contract. Right? You can sign a contract. You can buy something. You can sell something. You can recruit assistants, right? You can handle the operations. So, I mean, the biggest advantage of a sole proprietorships, I'm sure that is simple, simplicity. It's the most notable advantage, in particular by comparing with the partnerships and a company, right? You're going to learn about it later. That you have to handle a lot of formalities when you want to form a company, right? So running a business as a sole proprietor will be very simple because you can do it right now, immediately, right? You can start your own business right now, at this moment, right? At this moment. Simple decision making. The same logic here, because you are the only one, you are the only person responsible for the business, right? You're the only person. By comparing a law firm and a barrister, when you work at a law firm, you have to work with other partners. And there are some employed solicitors, and there are secretaries, paralegals, legal executive. You have to work with a lot of different persons, right? When you're in a partnership, or when you're in a company. In a company, you have the managers, you have your boss, right? We have different departments. And then think about a sole proprietor or sole proprietorships. You can almost do everything by yourself without consulting the others. And that's one of the reasons that I prefer to be a barrister, because I enjoy the independence. I can almost do everything by myself and make decisions by myself. I don't have a boss. I don't have a boss. I have a secretary, but my secretary is not someone work under me, right? She's only helping me to handle all the documents, to pick up the phones, to do some of the, the typing works, right? But actually, I don't need to cooperate with anyone as a barrister, right? Because I'm a sole proprietor. And then think about a doctor. They make decisions by themselves. So normally, think about a doctor not working in the hospital, right? If a doctor working in the hospital is not a sole proprietor, it's employee, right? It's an employee working in a company, right? If there's a private hospital. So simple decision making, it means that as a sole proprietor, you can make decision on your own without seeking approval from anyone else, right? Second one. So flexibility in changing the business structures. So think about that. If a sole proprietorship growth or expansion is needed, if that really happened, right? If that really happened, then you can, if you want to change into other business form, for example, right, at first, I'm buying or selling mechanical watches, but that involves a very small sum of money on every single month. But I don't know for what reasons, right? The business keep growing. So now the turnover get double and double and double again. So I understand that a sole proprietorships will not be suitable. Will no longer be suitable to handle such a big operation. So I prefer to form a company. I want to form a company, right, to turn my business from sole proprietorships into a company, so that I can do it tomorrow. Right? I can do it tomorrow, not now, because the company registry, they closed already. Right? So I will do it in the company registry because I have to file some forms, I have to pay some fees. But anyway, I can do it right now because I can change without consulting with the others. You think about it, if you have a company, right? If you have a company and then you have other directors, other shareholders, if you want to shut down your business and then back in becoming a sole proprietor, can you do it immediately? Can you do it tomorrow? Probably not. But you need to have the consent or approval from the others. So that will be the case for a partnership or a company. You cannot just end the business, right? If I'm a barrister, I can, stop practice. Well, so one day I have enough money, right? So I'm no longer practicing as a lawyer. So I can stop my practice at any time because I don't need to have approval. I don't need to have the consent from anyone. But if you work in a law firm, you want to partner, right? Of course, you can, talk to your partner. You can negotiate. You can discuss with your partners regarding your retirement. But you cannot do it immediately because you are inside a structure, right? In a company, you already have a structure here. If you want to terminate, if you want to close that organization, close that structures, you need to have the consent with the others, other shareholders, other directors, other partners, right? So, sole proprietorship is always flexible. If you want to end your practice and then change it into another form, right? Profit. If you have a company, if you have a partnership, then I'm sure that you have to share your profit, right? I think this is common sense, right? This is common sense. If you run your business as a sole proprietor, if you make money, right? If you have a profit, so everything belongs to you. Just right after my graduation from the BCLL, I was once hesitant whether I should be a barrister or solicitor. I can choose. So I've interviewed in some solicitor firms, right? They offer a very attractive package to me to do the corporate matters because even at that time as a trainee solicitor, I was quite experienced because I worked in different listed companies for a long time, right? So they offer a very attractive package to me. So in the short term, to join the law firm would be better because I get a paycheck, right? I get a paycheck. I get paid a salary, quite handsome. But if I work as a barrister, well, especially in the first few years, the income will not be good because I have to pay the rent by myself. I have to bear all the expenses, right? With the secretaries, right? All the office expenses, and I don't have a stable income. But you think about in the long run, right? In the long run, if you keep working in a law firm, so even if you are just an employed solicitor, then you only get a paycheck. So one day if you get promoted and you become a partner, right? Or equity partner, or the chairman, right? Anyway, you need to share your income with the firm. So that will always be a percentage, right? Always be a percentage. Maybe, I don't know, right? 30% or 50%. I think not more than 70%. So whenever you get paid from your client, right? Then you share with your law firm with a certain percentage. And then you think about the practice of a barrister. So I only have one. I don't have to share my income with anyone because that's not allowed because I cannot work in a partnership, right? I can only work as a sole proprietor. So it means that the only cost of my practice is to pay the rent and the salary of my secretary, but not a percentage. So if I get more experience, if I get a handsome legal fees, right, it grows with my experience, then my income will be better and better. Because I can always get all the profit, right? The only cost involved is the rent, and that's fixed. It's always the same, right? Always the same. Say like, so I can tell you, that's not a secret. In Hong Kong, if you have a small room, right, in the chambers around 12,000 to 50. Right. So that would be your cost to practice as a barrister in Hong Kong, with a chamber in Central, right? Medium size, right? Medium size chamber. But the cost here is fixed one. Right? It will always the same. But my legal fee may grow, right, with time. So in long run, right, I think it will be better to practice as a barrister, right? But not in the first few years. In the first few years, working as a solicitor will be better. You feel more comfortable in the first few years of your practice. But anyway, just remember that, right? Remember that the sole proprietor is the one to bear all the profit and losses. So he has almost absolute discretion to determine the use of fund profit, no matter for his personal entitlement or to reserve for the future business developments. Because all the money belongs to you as a sole proprietor. Right? You don't have to think about sharing with the others. You don't have to think about using the money to invest in the company again. Right? You don't have to, because you are the only one, you're the only person to handle everything. The last one, a closer relationship with the customers. So again, I mean the same logics. If you're running your business as a company, then the customer think about the name of the company. Or the customer think about the name of the product, right? They think about Galaxy Note. They think about iPad, right? The MacBook, the Apple Watch, right? They think about the name of their products, but they are not thinking about the name of a person, right? Not thinking about the name of a person. But when you run your business as a sole proprietor, because you are offering your service personally, so you get in touch with the customers directly, and that may be one of the advantages, right? Then how about the disadvantages of sole proprietorship? First one, limited financing. Right, limited financing. What do I mean by limited financing? So think about the source. When you want to have more money to be invested in your business, right? When you want to have more investment to be used in your business. Why I'm saying that you have a problem of limited financing because you have to think about the nature of your operations. As a sole proprietor, you're the only one, right? So it means that, right? It means that if you want money, you can either borrow from the others, normally from the bank, or to use your cash in the bank account, in your own bank account. Because you are only one person, so unless you are from a very wealthy family. So otherwise, your source of funds, your source of investment will be very limited. And also, as a sole proprietor, because you are only a human being, right? You're only a human being. So you don't have any special mechanism to raise funds. Like a company. You're going to learn about it later. Because for a company can issue shares. What I mean by issue shares? They just print the papers, right? 人工仔紙. They just print the papers in return for your hard-earned cash. So that's a mechanism available to company. A company can issue bonds. A company can issue debentures, 債券. right? They are tools, mechanism that can be used by the company to raise fund. But as a human being, you can, either one, you borrow money or use your own money, and that's all right? So the financing will be very limited. Another disadvantage, the workload, right? Workload. Well, that will be very easy to understand. Just take a look at me, right? Look at me. So I'm not really old, but I look very old. You know why? Because I'm a supervisor, right? I got all the gray hair and a dark circle, like a panda, right? Why I'm looking so old? Still handsome, right? I hope so, right? At least I hope. Okay. So why workload is a problem here? Because as a sole proprietor, you have to handle everything by yourself, right? Well, you may have an assistant, right? You may have assistants, just like the doctor. They can have a nurse, right? The nurse to help the doctors. And as a barrister, I have my secretary, but I don't have a system. You get the point here. If you were in the law firm, right? You were in the law firm. One day you can become a partner. So you have someone we call assistant solicitor, right? Assistant solicitor. What I mean by assistant solicitor, they are not really assistant, but they are employed solicitor. Right? They get a paycheck, they work for you. So as a partner, right, you spend time in the court, but not the court in Admiralty, not in High Court, but the golf court, right? Because they only try to solicit customers, client, right? And then they assign the job to the junior solicitors, right? They are the top graduates from Cambridge or from London U, right? Or from, they're very smart guys, young guys, so they work very hard, right? But they don't have the business connections. So the partner responsible for soliciting the clients, and then the junior lawyers, solicitor, they do the paperwork, right? So it means that, right? It means that if you are a very senior partner, if you are the boss of a law firm, then you have a system because you own a system. Right? There are many different departments in a law firm. So they have the litigation department, they have the IP department, right? They have the corporate finance department, right? There are many different departments here. So you can assign your work to different departments. You can delegate your work to the others because you are working in a system, right? You own a system, right? Partnership, company is all about system. By comparing with a sole proprietor, because a sole proprietor offers personal service, acupuncture, right? A surgeon, think about surgeons. You only want that surgeon to open your head to take something out, right? Because you only trust him, not the others. So the surgeon cannot delegate the surgery to another doctor. And a barrister, I cannot delegate my work to another barrister to act on behalf of me to handle the case in court. No, because the client want me to do the work, right? But unlike a law firm, when you engage a law firm, you just need to draft some documents, right? And then you have the documents. You don't know, so who is the guy actually draft the documents here? You only get it, right? That may be from the partner, but because you actually engage a firm, you engage a whole system. For a sole proprietor, one person. So even you are a very senior barrister, even you are a very senior medical doctor, a surgeon, right? One doing the surgery, you cannot delegate your work to the junior. You cannot delegate your work to the others. You still have to do everything by yourself. Of course, you can ask for a very handsome legal fee, right? If you're very experienced, if you are having a good reputation, right? You can ask for a very handsome legal fee. Your income will be good. But you cannot be really wealthy because you don't have a system. You'll be always restricted by your physical ability. How many hours you can really work, right? You'll be restricted. And no one can replace you. So, the business may collapse when he's not capable to take care of the business by himself. Death or sickness, right? So think about it. I cannot even get a cold here because no one can replace me. If I feel really uncomfortable tonight, right? So anyone can, replace me to take care of this class. I tell you no one, right? So I still have to do everything by myself. So even that's very exhausting, right? I work the whole day starting from 9 a.m., right? I keep talking around the call over 10 hours, but I still have to do everything by myself because I'm a sole proprietor, right? I'm a sole proprietor and I don't have a system. So even I'm a very senior lawyer, so very experienced teacher, I still have to do everything by myself, right? And the workload will really be a problem because you will be restricted by the nature of your practice. Right? If you own a system, you can one day become very wealthy, right? Because the system works by itself to generate cash for you. But as a doctor, as a lawyer, you still have to do everything by your own hands, right? And that will be, exhausting, right? That will be one of the disadvantages, right? Succession. So think about successions. So think about, say, like by comparing with a company. There's some very famous brand you can think of, right? Well, especially some European brands. The car, you think about Porsche, right? Porsche, you know Porsche, Ferrari, the car, Mercedes-Benz, or the watches, right? We have the Rolex, right? Everyone knows the name Rolex. Chopard, right? Silbon, right? Chopard, Cartier. So think about this company. So most of them, the company I just named, they're over a century, right? Some of them even over 200 years. The company is still here. Right? The company is still here. The brand still here. The product is still here, right? Because it can be succeeded by generation and generations. Because Rolex or BMW or Mercedes, they run the business, the company. They can be succeeded by different shareholders. So it doesn't matter because the company exists by itself, regardless of the owners. Right? So even the owners pass away, the shares can be, transferred to the grandson, to the son, to the grandson, right? Or to someone else. But then you think about a human being. Right? You think about sole proprietor. A sole proprietor is a human being. It's a person. So one day you retire, or one day you pass away, do you think that your reputations, your connection, can really be so smoothly being succeeded by someone else? That will be quite difficult. I'm not saying impossible, but quite difficult. Do you know a barrister, one of the barristers in Hong Kong, called John Swing, C-Y-E, John Swing, right? So he passed away a few years before. He was quite famous as a barrister. He was once the president of the Legislative Council before the handover. Right? It's a long time ago. He was also a Queen's Counsel, right? So very famous in the legal professions, right? In the last few years of his practice, he left the bar, right? He left the bar and admitted as a solicitor. Well, that's quite, I would say, quite abnormal for someone who have been practicing in the bar for over 13 years and also very successful, right? That's quite weird, right? Abnormal. That suddenly at the last few years of your practice, when he was over 70, right? And then to left the bar and to be admitted as a solicitor. Well, you can do so, right? Because after you get qualified, either as a barrister or solicitor, with 5 years or more experience, then you can change into you can join another arm of the profession, right? Without getting training again. You don't have to be a trainee solicitor again. If you have more than 5 years as a barrister, then you can become solicitor. Right? If you have more than 5 years as a solicitor, then you can be a barrister, right? Without working as a pupil. But that is normally only happen to the very junior practitioners, right? To the junior practitioner. Very unlikely for someone who have been practicing successfully in the bar for over 30 years. But why he left the bar? Right? Why he left the bar, John Swain? One reason, because he wanted to help his son. His son, right, was a very new solicitor. So Mr. John Swain wanted to make use of his own connection, right, reputations, to help his son to establish, his practice in the legal profession. And I mean, John Swain, right, Mr. John Swain, he understands that as a barrister, as a sole proprietor, his business, his practice will be very difficult to be succeeded by some, with everything being personal, right? You are the one to handle the case in court, but you are not the one, with a group of lawyers to draft some documents, to advise on some business project, right? You handle everything by yourself, and that nature, right? That nature, as a barrister, will be very difficult to be succeeded by another person, right? So he left the bar and admitted as a solicitor as a way to help his son to establish his own practice, right? And it showed that succession is a real problem for the sole proprietor or the sole proprietorship, right? Last one, unlimited risk. Unlimited risk. A sole proprietor faces unlimited risk in running his business in two different perspectives. Number one, there's no separate legal entity. And the sole proprietor need to bear all the liabilities incurred. I told you already, because as a sole proprietor, you are using your own name to run the business. So you sign the contract with your own name. So you recruit different staff with your own name, right? So you sign a tenancy agreement with your own name to get a shop here. You sign the buy and sell contract with your own name. So everything with your own name. So in case anything wrong, you will be the one suited, right? You will be the one suited. Number two, the sole proprietor himself is a business, so all his personal asset will be exposed to the business risk. Because you sign all the contract by yourself. You sign the employment contract with your staff. You sign the tenancy agreement, the landlord. You sign the buy and sell contract with your business partners. So if anything wrong, you will be suited. So in case you lose your case, then the court will grant an orders, and then your own money will be confiscated, right? All your personal asset will be exposed to the business risk. But if you run your business as a company, that will not be the case. Because you can make decisions, right? How much money you invest in this company. So in the worst scenario, you are losing all your money for your investment, but not your personal asset, right? Your own property, your own money in the bank account, or the apartment you are living here, the house you are living, will not subject to the risk of your business unless you put it into the company, right? Because if you run a business with a company, the company is separate from you. Right? You can make a decision on how much money you invest in a company, but not more than that. But if you run your business as a sole proprietor, you expose yourself, fully to all the business risks. All right. So the last advantage is unlimited risk as a sole proprietor. Right. So that's all about sole proprietorships. Maybe a few more pages, then we have a break, right? Maybe two or three more pages, then we have a break. All right, so that's all about sole proprietorships. So remember, right? Remember, partnership and sole proprietor, they're important. I can almost guarantee that you're going to have questions related to partnership or sole proprietor. Okay, partnership, right? The second vehicle in running a business. So what's a partnership? What's a partnership? I mean, to the layperson, to the layman. So normally it means a group of people staying together, cooperating for some purpose. So sometimes you call your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband as a partner, right? Lifelong partner. Or you have a football team, right? You're always playing football in your estate or on behalf of your company. And sometimes you call your teammate also as a partner, but that's not a legal definition, of course, right? That's only the definition of a lay person. It means someone stay close with you, to work with you as a partner. So we consult the definition of partnerships in the law. We have the partnership ordinance, right? And section 3, subsection 1, define partnership. So the law defines partnership as something like this. A partnership is a kind of relationship which subsists between persons carrying out business in common with a view to profit. All right? So that's the definition in law. So we'll try to break it down. Number one, it's a relationship. Remember, all right? Remember, a sole proprietor is not a relationship. What is a sole proprietor? A sole proprietor is a human being. It must be a human being, right? You get my point here. A sole proprietor must be a human being, because a sole proprietor means that you are running the business by yourself, using your own name. So sole proprietor must be a human being, which is someone with a biological function, right? 有機嘅叫做 organic, right? It must be something organic. And a company is a separate legal entity. I'll explain to you later, right? Just remember the name first. A company is a separate legal entity because a company is something separate from you, right? You establish something separate from the owners. And the sole proprietor is a human being. But for a partnership, the law defines partnership as a relationship, right? It's a relationship, remember, very important, right? Very important. So it's not an entity, not a registration, not a registration, right? A company's registrations. If you don't have the document being registered in the common registry, then you don't have a company. But for a partnership, that's not, right? That's not even an entity, but a relationship. What I mean by relationship? Law design one, person with a plural form, right? Person as with a plural form. It means that more than one person, 2 or 3 or more, all right? So what I mean by relationship, it means a group of persons. A group of persons. Partnership means a group of persons, not a separate legal entity, not a human being, right? Not one human being, one single human being that's sole proprietor. A separate legal entity, which is a company. But partnership is a group of people, relationship, persons, plural, right? Number 3, a business in common. What I mean by business in common? So a partnership can never be an enterprise. What I mean by enterprise? So enterprise, I think Changgong is an enterprise, right? The company of Li Ka-shing. Why Changgong is the enterprise? Why Hutchison Wangpo is an enterprise? Why Swire Group, why Jardine is an enterprise? Because they have a lot of different business, right? They have property, they have retail, they have telecommunication. But the partnership can never be an enterprise. Why? Because the law defines partnership as a business in common. What I mean by business in common? They are doing one thing only, right? They're doing one thing only. So normally, partnerships, so only being used as a form by the professional. You think about a professional, the lawyers, architects, surveyors, CPA, right? They only do one kind of business. So when you approach a law firm, legal service, architect, you know that, right? Surveyors, the CPA, accounting service, tax, right? Basically the same thing. Because that's the definition in law. When you form a partnership, you have to do something in common, right? On a continuous basis, not an ad hoc basis, right? On a continuous basis, but one thing, right? One thing. And profit. When you form a partnership, You have to aim for profit. I'm not saying that you have to make a profit, right? Because that's not possible. You cannot have a law and saying that when you run a business, you have to make a profit, right? So everyone want to make a profit if you want to run a business. So I'm not saying that you have to make a profit, but you have to aim for a profit, right? So what are the implications for aiming for a profit? It means that non-commercial purpose, like charity, interest, religion, cannot be formed as a partnership. So you cannot form a partnerships in offering, charity to run a hospital for the orphans, for the elderly. No, right? So think about Bolan Group in Hong Kong, right? The Tung Wan Group of Hospital in Hong Kong, they're all being incorporated as a company. So they are charity, right? They're offering charitable services. The Tung Wan Group in Hong Kong, Poland Group, right? They are a company. Right? You can check, right? You can check. They're a company. They're not partnership. But when you form a partnership, you can only aim for profit. Right? If you are not aiming for profit, that's not a partnership, based on definition here. So one more page and then we have a break, right? One more page. Identification of partnerships. So again, do you remember the example I once mentioned? So how to prove a marriage and how to prove a romance between boyfriend and girlfriend. Do you remember that I asked the question before, right? So how to prove a marriage? Simple. The marriage certificate. So you have one thing which is conclusive evidence. So it means that I don't care whether you are in love with your husband or your wife, right? Because from the legal perspective, if you can show me the marriage certificate, and of course you are not having divorce, right? You have that certificate. So in law, right? In law, from the legal perspective, you are married to the person. But that's conclusive evidence. So I don't have to consider, anything else, right? I don't have to consider whether you are holding hands together, right? Whether you are having candlelight dinner. I don't care, right? You are really in love with your husband, with your wife. I don't care, because from a legal perspective, provided that you have the marriage certificate, then you are a married person, right? But if I ask you questions, how to prove that they are in love, they are boyfriend and girlfriend, do you have one thing which is conclusive evidence? You don't have. Right? You don't have. You have to, think of the whole circumstances, right? You have to look for the whole circumstances. So whether they are always staying together, whether they are kissing each other, whether they are holding hands together, right? There are a lot of things before you can be certain whether they are having a romance, they are boyfriend and girlfriend, right? So that would be the case for a partnership. So because if you want to prove whether you have a company, you're going to learn about from lecture 3. That would be very simple, right? Because you only need to show one document, which is the certificate of incorporation, which is something like the birth certificate of a human being. Right? If you are a human being, you have a birth certificate. Right? For a company, you have the certificate of incorporation because that is a document issued by the company registry to prove that you complied with all the formalities, and then you have a company. Because you can only form a company by registration. So you have one single conclusive evidence to prove your existence. But that's not the case for partnership. Because law defines partnership as a relationship. Right? As a relationship. So it means that you have to consider many different factors, right? In order to understand whether you really have a partnership here. Right? That's very important. Because there are no rigid requirements on the formation of partnerships. The law never defines any formalities that you have to do in order to form a partnership. Right? No registration requirement. You need to fill a form in order to form a partnership. Then you can skip this page. Right? We don't have to concern about the identification of partnership. Because provided that you have that form being filed to the government department, then you have a partnership. Right? So that would be very simple. But that is not a requirement in law because there are no rigid requirements. But Section 4 of the Partnership Ordinance only stipulate some rules regarding the identification of a partnership. The law only states some elements that you have to consider, right? So if you have the elements here, then you have a partnership. Number 1, to share profit and losses, right? To share profit and losses. to share net profit, I'm sorry, right? To share the net profit. Another one, to share losses and profit. So the law say that if you want to identify, so whether you have a partnership here, then you have to look for these elements. But they are not conclusive still, right? They're not conclusive. And we have to consider some cases in order to understand how the court interpreted Section 4, all right? And that will be what after the break, all right? We can have a break first. 15 minutes.